Oh, yes, recording in progress. Oh, yeah, you hear those sultry vibes from the computer person?
Oh,
Recording in progress. I think they did that because people want consent with recording, and I think that's like part of it. I really do think because that voice wasn't there last week. Like,
hmm.
I could record and nothing would happen. It would just record. It would be this little doohickey up here that says recording. But now it tells you when it's starting and stopping audibly, like audibly interrupts with a kind of thing. So that's funny. Well, here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Underworld Party interviews, chit chats, conversations, tea time, whatever you want to call it. And we are here today. We are here today. We are here right now in this very, very present moment, this immediate moment, with someone I am super, super, super excited to talk about. And we're gonna have a non-interview interview today and see where that goes, and so have some fun around this. Um, Asha, Asha, Asha. Okay, okay, okay. Can you please just say your name for everyone and tell us where you're calling in from and where you're sitting today, and I'll do the same, and we'll get this party started.
Yeah. So Asha, Asha or Ash. Ash for people that don't really know me so well. Asha for people that get a bit closer. Um, I'm in Seattle, Duwamish land. I just moved over to the West Seattle side, which feels like another world, really close to the water. Um, so that's where I'm at. It is a weekend. There may be very loud music that bumps through my windows because everybody comes to the beach. Um, so yeah, that's where I'm at. Uh, my cats Lunar and Anastasia will be popping in and out. You might want to get acquainted with them as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they'll guest star and then we'll have to ask them some questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on, right on. So Asha, I'll just go with Asha for this cast. So you wrote something on Instagram the other week that I thought was really good distillation. And I'm really interested in the words that we're going to be talking about today, the meanings, the definitions, but not just these abstract concepts. I'm talking about the embodied thing, the embodied living, sort of making, becoming the poiesis of what we're actually going to be talking about. So these two words that you wrote about were consent, praxis. Consent, praxis. I'm just going to let those hang in the air for a second, because those are two very powerful words. They're very powerful spells, and they have an energy alone, and together they have a different kind of energy. So consent, praxis. Now, as I do my thing looking for people that I know that are practitioners, people that I know that are artist practitioners, animist artist practitioners, I'm always kind of asking this kind of meta question in my mind, which is X your art form? So in this case, I just want to say, Asha, is consent or consent praxis your art form? Would you consider it to be your art form? Or is there even more behind that? Like, do you have another primary art form and it just informs consent praxis? So I'm really curious as to where this just is located in your own life way.
Oh, yeah. Like, so, yes and no. Yes, mostly. So, I think of consent as like a human skill. And so is art then too. Like anybody can do it and you need it. Like you need that in order to thrive. Um, so, but But a consent praxis to me is a style, a way of being. So everybody can have their own consent praxis and it might influence your art form. So that is how it is for me. Um, art form. Oh, I don't know. um, I dabble in a lot and I'm not particularly great at anything, and I like it that way. um, should I get into more of what consent praxis means? We're letting it hang.
Yeah, let it hang. Let it hang a bit. Just checking. I'm having a little bit of cutting in and out on your audio. Is there like a microphone thing you can do or something? It's interesting because when you're talking, I can hear it, but it's sort of like the beginning or softer sounds of of the talking are not present. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if you something like that. And I'm sure that the recording is recording what it's recording, but I'm just noticing some kind of cutting. Are you noticing any cutting on my end?
No, but there's a setting in Zoom that's like suppress low background noises. So probably my voice is a low background noise. So I changed it to be high background noises, which includes like dogs barking, apparently. So if
Okay.
I don't sound like that, I think we'll be good.
Oh
Does it sound
yeah.
better now?
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit. There's still some things, but it's not as strong as before. I guess what we'll do is just we'll just have to slow down a bit because I think it's the latency of the pickup on your end. So we'll just have to listen in for that. Okay. So consent praxis. It is an art form. It is also a skill. You said though it is primarily for you about your style of consent. Okay. So your style of consent, so like the way that you practice consent as a kind of aesthetic, is that?
Mm, mm, yes. So there's several approaches to consent, I think. The main one that we see in our world right now is a really intellectual heady way of looking at consent. People want contracts, they want verbal explicitness, and like sometimes I promote that. I'm like, yes, that's better than nothing. It's way better than nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that style to me is very white. It's very rigid. It's yeah, it can't be very adaptable. It really aligns with our criminal justice system, actually. Even
Sure.
for people that like say they're opposed to that when they're practicing consent in this way, I'm like, you practice consent like a cop. Like,
Wow. Let's just let that hang for a second, right? Like you
yeah.
practice consent like a cop. And that's real.
Mm-hmm.
That's some real that's some real shit. That's some real
That's not
ooh.
my style.
Yeah, right. But and so people coming to you, let's say someone is practicing consent like a cop. Is it easy for you to accept that that style is a style and that it's sort of like valid on its own, or do you kind of go, and do you know you're doing that? Because that's a weird style.
Yes, 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 it's both. So, are they aware that they're doing that? If they are, then are they being honest about it? Are they front loading people with that? Of like, this is how this is my style. Do you want to interact with me? Do you want to be in my space if this is
Ooh.
how I think it's sent?
And it's like, yeah, this is how I roll to the club. Do you want to roll to the club with me? Like, no, 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 no. I think I'm gonna get a lift and go on my own.
I don't fuck with cops. That's just me.
Yeah. Right, that's right. And so, yeah, something here, just for me, what's percolating is we, I think, in pop culture, think of consent as the like a thing or an object that we can touch, so we can prove that it existed. Like I have an artifact of this ephemerality. I have a thing. I have a thing. It's my consent. I we did consent. You and me did consent. See, it's a rock over there. You know, we can point to it or something. But I feel what's coming up now as the metaphors and mythologies we're starting to use or starting to use us is that consent is also about how you approach things in general and how you allow other people to relate to your style of approaching, your style of relating, rather than even getting into, oh, we did consent. It's like, no, we haven't even consented to consent together yet. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
yeah. Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, consent is a thing that you can own is again to be a very like white colonialist like way of looking at it. And like it comes from the Latin consentire and it means to feel with or to feel together. Or if we want to get specific, sentire, it means to sense together. And
It's
it's
a
like,
sense
and that
together. That's really
mhm,
important. That's a really important pivot.
mhm. By the 1300s, Old French, there's the power aspect of like yield when you have the right not to, um, like scenting. So, and then that's like what people have kind of stuck with of like, it's my power token piece that I hold on to. I give my consent, I take it back. And it's like, but we lost that original meaning of like it was actually referring to a process, like a space between
Right,
people,
right, right,
urgent sensing together. It,
right.
like,
And that to me is like anything that we're doing in in nature, so-called nature, the wild or places that are unfamiliar, is that you enter somatically and perceptually and via your attention, you have to enter into a real slow down sensing because you have to have wide angle vision. You have to like manage your footsteps if you're walking in terrain that you don't know. You have to be looking close and far and in the in between. So that's various distances, you know, long range, short range, mid range. And that's just only with the visual senses, you know, then you have to listen. You have to be listening behind you, listening, you know, for possible predators or whatever, you know, like you're in an unfamiliar place and that place is filled with other living creatures. And so if two people or two beings were in that space together, they would be consenting through the forest, right? Like they would literally, like if you and me took this as a praxis, just what we've been talked about so far, and went to the edge of a national park or national forest, and we looked at each other and started walking, we would be technically on some in some way consenting together through the forest, right?
and my question then is like, so the details matter of consent, like every sense that you have matters. So are your feet consenting in that forest? Like you're wearing these thick ass shoes, like that are actually just like stomping around, making all this noise. Like, are you really consenting? Are you listening back? Like, what adjustments are you making? It's not the we did it at the beginning, and so we continued consenting the whole time. Like it's a process.
Right, right, right. Right, and that's another thing, right? It's like consent as a switch that you flip and not like on and off. Like I turned it on, it's on. Oh, I turned it off, it's off. It's like I said yes, I said no. I said yes, I said no. It's an on-off switch, right? And they're talking about something that is moment to 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 moment.
is the utility in saying it was on? Like, what is the utility there? What I find in a lot of conversations is it's punishment. So that I can say, like, you kept going when the consent was like, if we're kind of on it as like a dimmer, for example, it was all the way down and you kept going. And now what do I want? Often it's punishment. um, Rather than like, so how was I to know that that was occurring in that moment? What can I do to adjust it back up? What were the cues? Like, a lot of people expect you to be actually inside their body, experiencing what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Like, consent is the weapon that they get to use to like force you to have that experience. And it's like, no.
Hmm. Right, but it speaks to some kind of primary need, though, or desire of like wanting to be felt, like wanting another person to know you like a gestalt imprint, like
Mhm.
almost like it's but you know it's also like X-Men shit, right? It's like we want people to have like latent telepathy. Like we really do, right? Like I want people to just know what the fuck I need or want or like how to treat me. But the reality is I don't even fucking know what I want and I don't even know how to treat myself. And so I want to outsource it to other people because then I can say to them, well, you weren't empathic. You weren't being empathic to me. And it's like, well, I probably wasn't being empathic to myself.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big fucking deal. If I'm not being empathic to myself and someone hurts me, a lot of the work that I have to do is where did I lose track of something in my system where I didn't see something coming or I wasn't taking care of myself or I was overextended or something was happening where I just forgot I could negotiate. You know, I forgot I could say, hold on a second, or no. You know, like I forgot, or I forgot to just move away. Like if those aren't options, I forgot to be like, I need to go fucking take a break or something. But I get it because of the heightened sense of urgency in this culture, this westernized white culture, where we want the light switch. We want to take 0.01 second to turn on the light switch,
Mhm.
and we want to fucking be damn sure it stays on because we don't want to spend any more energy thinking about it.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And it's like the the process of flicking the light switch is so not erotic to me. Like, why do you want that? Just the quick, ah, here it is, and then we go pretty much leave our bodies behind and like have the experience. Um, ah, like, yeah.
So let's try to talk about what people might actually want in a vein of like what you actually want and what I actually want, which is like why even consent praxis if we're not doing this like punishment defensive mode of consent praxis where it's like why do you practice consent to defend myself from people. It's like
Yeah.
okay sure but like what is that really like what do you really want though like what's behind the need to defend or protect. Why consent praxis in a really kind of life affirming way or an erotically aroused way of like going towards that which gives us some kind of joy, fascination, something, you know, like some kind of like pleasure. Why would we even, yeah, why would we even, you know? So what is this real thing?
So I have to admit that I definitely got into consent in a I want to defend myself motivation. That was primary for me. Um, I was big into the idea that we could prevent trauma. Like, consent can just stop it from happening. If only people understood it, we'd save the world. And like, literally, I was doing a support group with survivors of domestic violence and like understanding my childhood, understanding my own abusive relationship, and been like, okay, we could have solved this. Like, it could have just never happened and will never happen again if only consent. And like, And then I had to do that looking underneath, like, okay, what's the real motivation? Like, I feel like I lost out on a lot of pleasure that was possible. And I see people that are like, I just fucking want to feel good. Like, why has this happened to me? Why can't I avoid this in the future? And but then there's also the piece of like, I wouldn't even be interested in this if those things had happened. Like, trauma is unavoidable in one way or another.
Right. 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 Right.
So, why even like that erotic feeling fully alive piece, even when my consent is being violated or I'm feeling like it's getting that way on the dimmer? Like, I want to be there for it. I don't want to check out and run away and make it somebody else's responsibility. Like, I want to be able to show up and like, if that's the solving anything, like that's what it actually is like I didn't run away that time, like, and I was aware of what was happening. I was fully alive. I was in it even when it was feeling like trash.
Mhm. Right. So there's something about, so for me, when I hear you say that, I think of intimacy. I think of intimacy with pain, intimacy with trauma, intimacy with the phenomenons that are rising in my system or in the shared co-system or whatever is happening. And of course that's a lot of intimacy, right? Like that's a lot of
Mhm.
intimacy. How do you navigate the potential to just be flooded or overwhelmed with stuff to be intimate with? Because you're talking about a real mystical process. It's not really about another person. I mean, another
No.
person is there, part of the play, right? Like it's real. They're an integral part of what's happening. But also, this is not just about what the other person is doing to you or for you or with you or whatever. So how do you play with not just exploding with sensation or something, you know?
Mhm. Well, what's the what's the skin exploding? Like, what's the real bad thing that could happen? What's the worst thing? You die? Well, like I've been on this for a little bit. Like, you're gonna die. There's no avoiding that. So, like, there is the wanting to be present in the thick of it, in the sensation, is so you have more choice, like to create containers around it. Like, you've talked about titration and being like, I want to turn this up just 1% or like turn this down 5%. It's to be able to have that of like, okay, this was getting way too much for me. Like, beyond just me and you, a lot, so much else came into the container. Gonna need a container for that. I'm like, I didn't run away from it and pretend like that didn't happen. I'm like, I'm choosing, I'm gonna need a container for that.
Yeah.
And we could play with it too. That's where, like, a lot of my consent education started in the kink community, and they got play. Like, they can play with shit. And so that's where I feel like it comes in. Like, there are sacred containers or just really playful containers for all of that sensation. And if you've got it undergirded by a death practice of like, what's the worst thing? We die. Let's get intimate with that. Then I think you're pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean that's a breath of fresh air because we're talking now about like how to even be able to create containers, because if you want to play, you play in an area like there is some kind of containment field in the player's mind that gives them the boundaries of what they're either able to do or the place, the terrain that they will traverse, for lack of a better term, the land, the amount of land. Like for instance, if you put a kid in a sandbox and you say, please don't leave the sandbox, they kind of know that they can play inside of the sandbox, right? They're like, okay, they said there's a barrier, here's a threshold, I can't cross that. I mean, that's like the simplest way to talk about it, right? But on a kind of more free flowing level, to be able to go with another person in a potentially sexually intimate or maybe even risky, because sex is risky, or love is risky, or kink is risky, like everything's risky, right? But to actually be able to mitigate the risk almost before it starts to happen, because you have to be able to go, okay, what could happen in this container? Could I die? Could I feel like I was going to die? You have to be able to go, oh, I might not. It's like, oh, I might not actually die in this container, but I might feel like I'm going to die in this container. And that's even before you step in. You have to actually have some preparatory, like, like hygiene. Like
Yes.
before you get kinky, you want to clean the bits, you want to smell good. But
Mhm.
this is like a kind of mental hygiene, we could say, a
Mhm.
kind of emotional hygiene where you have to deal with, like, am I really afraid of doing this? Am I really craving it to the point where I'm going to make weird decisions because I'm so desperate? It's a kind of spiritual hygiene where you're like, why am I really fucking doing this?
Mhm.
Like, what am I trying to actually get out of this? And whatever, so this has been coming up for me a lot in just repatterning how I'm approaching my life art praxis, how I'm doing what I do, which is a kind of mixture of like, integration work, but also play and art making. It's like, but it's also, deeply useful for dealing with things like trauma. And that's kind of why I started too, is like I wanted to deal with the problems, but at the same time, I wanted to actually have more fun in the life. Like, oh, there's this moment where you can feel weightless. And those moments happen sometimes when we're dancing, sometimes when we're making love, sometimes, not all the time, but
Mhm.
when we're dancing, when we're in nature, when we're making art, there are these moments of weightlessness where we're not just tied down by the problems and we're not even trying to solve the problems because it's not a big deal right now. And that's this other thing of like, oh, why are we, doing this? And what I've just been coming back to is hygiene. Like, it's so basic. If you don't clean between your toes, it's gonna get nasty. So clean between your toes, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit. I mean, yeah, I don't know, some kind of auntie wisdom or something. Like clean your ears. It's like very.
Ah, it's like, so I talk about autonomy often as your right to decide what's best for your whole body, mind, spirit, information story. And like, what's best? And how do you know that capacity piece? And it's like kids don't really know. They might decide never bathing is best for them. And like, yeah, I don't want to clean behind my ears. And then it's like, okay, so the other half of that autonomy piece is the community piece. Like, you didn't appear out of nowhere, you came from somebody. Everything that you eat and live, and so many people have been involved in you being allowed to be here. Um, and if you don't want to clean behind your ears, nobody wants to be around you. Nobody wants to be there with you. So for me, the consent praxis is about like finding my people, um, finding people with a similar style that we can vibe with. And like, if, and the language of it is maybe like consent is a spell that brings in people that are looking for something different than what I am looking for.
Oh, snap! That's like you're really that's a real like you're using consent as a way to clarify the different desires and to be able to go, great, let's not get into the container together because we don't fucking want the same things.
We don't actually.
Right? It's like we all roll up to the club, but it's a million clubs actually.
Mhm.
Right? Like inside that club is a million clubs. There's the club in the corner, there's the club by the bartender, there's the club by the door, there's the clubs that's smoking outside the door, there's the patio, you know, there's the middle of the dance floor, there's right up against the speaker, there's on the couches, there's in the bathrooms. That's at least 25 different clubs in that club, right? And
Mhm.
I imagine in, consent parties or kink parties or something like that, there's even more.
Mhm.
there's just almost you can invent your own you can invent your own party, invent your own club. Like, oh, over in this corner, I want to get tickled. Does anyone really love tickling? Oh, well, I love to tickle. And then you have to negotiate something about tickling, right? Because it might not just be that they want to do it. You might need to be like, well, your vibe is off. I can't vibe check you,
Yeah.
like it's real.
Yeah.
It's like I don't like your style. I don't like the shoes you're wearing. They're not turning me on and make me think of bad things, and I'm not going to deal with that right now. Or like, hey, I want to start the club of people who don't clean behind their ears, and only people who don't clean behind their ears are going to go to that club. And then everyone else might be like, but we're like, good for you. That's where you hang out because you all
Mhm.
want to do this weird thing, and okay, but we don't, you know, that's good. Like, I think that that's good. I think that we can be able to be freaky and just have it be like, I'm freaky in my freaky pile.
Mhm.
And but I do think that growing up as a so-called man in this culture, right? That's what I grew up as, my poor ass dad, Puerto Rican dad, became a prison guard to pay the bills, so like deeply problem, like you already see the internalized, shit. But
Mhm.
but I remember one time when I was a kid and like watching David Copperfield. Remember the magician David Copperfield? Such a pacey way, hilarious, amazing, woo, flamboyant, make the Statue of Liberty disappear, right?
Mhm.
I remember my dad getting really upset that David Copperfield wore mascara as a stage performer. You see,
Oh.
it's like really weird, right? So I
Mhm.
grew up as a man, and and that means that something to some people about what it means to be a man and what you have to do to be like not like beat the fuck up or something, whatever that means too, because it's like all the threatenings, right? And so as a man, like I grew up not really understanding what I actually wanted, and also on some level being like averse to knowing what I wanted.
Mhm.
Because if I really was true to what I wanted, I would get punished, right? And I'm not even necessarily talking about sex. I'm talking about all these other things aesthetically and culture. Like
Mhm.
aesthetically, like yeah, like the gender or sexual expression that I want to make love with is not the same as like wanting to do burlesque or like wanting to be on stage or like being naked or like they're not the same fucking things. And yet in the culture I grew up in, everything was lumped and clumped together in an undifferentiated mess of nonsense, and that made it so that it took me a very long time to be able to deal with what I actually wanted. And I think what you're saying here is that you need to fucking get on that shit.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to.
Mhm.
Yes, you want to talk a bit about that? Like that must be a sticking point. Like I don't know how many so-called men you work with, but I imagine that is a sticking point. I mean, maybe,
Mhm.
enlighten me.
A lot of it is when you're in this ideology of consent as an object to be obtained, more focused on what do I want to get? What do I want to get that's going to like reinforce this identity? And I haven't even looked at what's already propping that up. And I don't want to do that. I just want to keep getting the things that'll keep propping it up. So teach me how I can get this consent stuff to work and not be for a lot of them, like not be shunned from these social justice spaces. Like, how can I learn this new art of manipulation? And I'm like, it's not really what it is. And that first part where I'm like, look at how non consensual the system you've grown up is. Sit with the grief and pain of that first and start to formulate your praxis out of like, I don't fucking want that. Look what it's done to me. Like, I don't even know what being a man is. And I, like, start there before you're like, give me the things.
Right. Right, because it's like, what I keep seeing all the time in the work that we're in the same field, even though I'm not necessarily a consent focused person. That's definitely part of it. And you're one of the people I look to be like, what's the actual spirit of consent? Not this hokey dokey white bullshit that's down the street that everyone's like, this is consent. I'm like, yeah, yes, that sounds like fascism to me, actually.
Yes.
Sounds like fascism, but okay.
Oh,
I'm like, whatever. You said some words. I get it. So we're over
mhm.
here now. And it's yeah, there's just something about like the context underneath the context. If we're using consent in a dualistic way, westernized, about owning things, about contracts, transactions, capitalism, this kind of domination, submission paradigm. It's always win lose. It's never win win. It's always win lose. It's always like some kind of nonsense like that. If we're doing that with consent and we're recreating the systems by which that kind of manipulation is just the way it is all the time, and there's no other alternative, I really struggle with how so-called very well-meaning people who identify as victims or identify as oppressed or marginalized would then start and want to exert influence in the very same ways that they don't like living.
Yep.
And yet we're so afraid of being exiled from something. Like, I didn't even want to be at this club. Why am I so afraid of being kicked out? It wasn't even that great of a time.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, oh, this is better. There's something better for me somewhere else where I don't have to constantly fight for something or manipulate or negotiate. Like, yes, negotiation, sure. Like, it's not a problem. It's great if we can do it with, fun, ease, lightness, and, all sorts of things. But I do get the sense that a lot of people, especially these well-meaning people who have been traumatized or who have or are dealing with this unconscious patterning thing, like I have to be a man or whatever the fuck, is that they're just it's like they're having an argument in a hall of mirrors somewhere, right?
Mhm.
Where I'm not actually the person they're talking to. And that's really bad when we consider racism is all about not seeing the other for the fact that they are another. And just having this fucking like I'm talking to a projection of you, thinking I'm talking to you. But I'm not actually talking to you. And I feel that a lot with people who are so protective or so defensive or so like, you didn't say the right thing. It's like, who are you talking to right now? Like,
Yeah.
where did you go? Like, what is happening? Like, why are you not here right now? And I'm really just struggling with like how hard it seems for some people to get actually right there.
So the binary view of consent is like, tell me I'm a good person, because there's good and bad. And if I'm doing consent the right way, I'm a good person. I'm a good man. I'm a good woman. I'm a good survivor. I'm a good leftist, whatever it is. Um, and there's no interrogation of the good, bad split at all of like, yeah, that club. Why do I want to be in this club where we're dividing things up this way anyway? I don't care. Um, and then to the race piece, for me, it's a lot of like, I'm a human. Aren't I a human? Like, and that color blindness of, well, yeah, of course, we're all humans here. And I'm like, did I want to be a human? Like, where, what about that conversation first? Like, did I even consent to that split of like proving my humanity to you? And then
Boom.
that, yeah, that conversation of like, who are you? Who are you talking to? That first part, who are you? Are you in my community? Like, Do I have to answer to you? Like, why'd you come around here policing me?
Right. 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 And this is that scary thing because, like, in order for the left to do good, they essentially have to police those who are unpoliceable, which seems to mean every single person who says something they don't understand or something they think is dangerous. So how do you help people navigate this whole thing about, but that's dangerous? Like like, oh, it's dangerous and danger means harm and harm means abuse and conflict means abuse. And I'm really interested, like, how do you help people and how do you help yourself deal with the inevitable conflict, the inevitable, like, feeling dangerous, thing that I just think it's like normal. Like I feel like I'm in danger when I cross the fucking street, like what the hell? Like that's right. Like that's not safe. Like this is crazy.
Our, like, we live in a car world. It's already unsafe to me in that way. Like, yo, yeah. So that danger piece comes to the safety piece. Like, you don't get safety, and safety is not a good foundation for solidarity, for anything. It's just not. Like, so the policing piece of, like, admit that you get pleasure out of doing that. It's not really about solidarity. Like, when you look at that safety piece, you know that it's an illusion. It just dissolves and crumbles right away. It doesn't hold up. You get pleasure out of doing that. um, and where else can we find the pleasure? And the dangerous piece of, like, so you don't want to be in community. Sit with that pleasure that you want to get out of policing them, which is like just feeding all right back into the things that you're supposedly against, the racism, the oppression. It's like you want that power of being the oppressor. And I think there's actually containers where you can play with it, and that's cool and fine and well to do if you look at and really acknowledge and accept that desire to begin with.
Right. Right. And I think that, yeah, like, I think we hear a lot about this in the nonsensical neo-tantric masculine feminine discourses
Mhm.
where they start to get to this place where they're like, okay, so masculine energy and feminine energy, and sure, like that's better at least than this idea of like man woman dynamics don't make any fucking sense. But that's still a kind of a lie that we're telling ourselves about the natural hungers that we have that might not fit into the itty bitty morality containers that we are trying to uphold with our persona, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to admit that I want to fight. I don't want to admit that I want to be dominated or dominate, right? Like, I'm not actually interested in the larger implications of that,
Mhm.
right? So I'm going to have this freaking word game that I play with people to signal that I'm a very, very good person. And it's actually dishonest. Because the honesty that you're talking about here is to get honest really about the core want or the core desire that is happening in any given moment, such as, I just want to close your mouth right now, or like, I want to attack and kill. And like, you got to fucking get with that. You got to get with that. Like, for a split second, you wanted to eradicate this person physically from the planet. And that's probably a natural animal thing, but you haven't encountered that in any kind of you haven't really encountered that yet. You haven't actually gone, wow, I really have this urge inside me and I need to fucking figure it out. It's more about like, I just don't want to get kicked out of this club, so I'm going to go along with what people are saying and I'm going to talk this nonsense. And yeah, to me, it's just like, it's not even dishonesty about what you think you're talking about. It's dishonesty about your own, like, why the fuck are you here? Why did you come to the club?
Hmm.
Like, what was the context that led you to even be in this context? Because there's plenty of people who aren't right here, right now, right? There's plenty of people that are in another context because they made different choices based on different contexts. But when people come to me with this kind of very strong energy of like, you're doing this, I need you to do that, it's like, why are you actually asking me that? I can't actually consent to what you're asking me until I know why you're asking it to me. And like, if the other person gets defensive about that, I can tell right away, like, they don't want to look at why they fucking came to me with whatever they came to me. They don't want to get really honest about what they're actually feeling or what they're actually wanting, which is like, oh, dear, I just wanted you to die. You know what I mean? Like, I would be so happy if some of the people that I deal with just fucking were honest about, like, yeah, most of the time I want you to die. And I would be like, well, that's a fucking start. I can do like that's real. But this other thing that they're talking about is that to me is the microaggression where it's like, oh no, you're fucking racist, but you just want to talk about it. You want to talk about it in this term you're comfortable with instead of just being like, you freak me out with your mixed raceness and I want you to die because it turns me on and I hate it or something. Something. Who fucking knows what's going on? But I'm often like scratching my head, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why can't people get with their wants in a situation and be able to just like, you don't even have to say it. You just have to might be like, okay, no, I got, like you sit with that, like, oh yeah, I really, you know, and shame and guilt come up and whatever, but I don't know, like the honesty of like the refreshness of the honesty is, I would love to see that in our communities a lot more. Like a real honesty, but what do you think is blocking people from this just refreshing quality of honesty?
So I think about somebody essentially coming to you with a kink, like a punishment kink, and they haven't like masturbated on it. Like
Oh, fuck.
they won't do that. And so back to that question earlier about like what's my art form? My masturbation practice is one of my art forms. And like a lot of people come to consent because they want to be better at sex. They want to have more sexual partners. They want to get what they want. And I'm like, and have you been honest about what you want? Like, really with yourself? And where you do that is by masturbating. Like, do that with yourself. Like, really sit with those desires and where they come from. And that prickly shame feeling and what it looks like, and then breathe through it and continue to make decisions. And like, you're all safe in here. Like, this is maybe the only safe space of like that fantasy realm that you can create there. Explore, play around in there before you go putting that on somebody else.
Right. And I feel this a lot too in terms of like when people talk about attachment. It's all very human centric, but not only is it human centric, it's person to person centric, which is like, I need the other to create the space for me. And what you're actually saying is, no, you can just create the goddamn space. Go to this fantasy space because it's actually the first line of inquiry and it's the first line of discovery and it's the first line of even figuring out how to deal with your shit is like, can I keep it contained in my own little fantasy realm or does it run out of control even in there? And these are not conversations I hear a whole lot of people talking about.
Mhm.
Consent is always about the other person, the other, and you are negotiating. And it's like, what you're talking about here is something so much more immediate, so much more primary, so much more like, what is the beginning of the beginning? Like, what is the beginning of the beginning? Oh, the beginning of the beginning of consent praxis is not actually walking up to someone and practicing consent with them so that you can get something or whatever, insert, your reason there. It's actually like honesty, and then you're bringing in masturbation. Let's just say it, masturbation, like masturbating about honesty, or at least, I don't know, honest masturbation, maybe. It's like fantasizing honestly and figuring out why you cringe, why you might have disgust reflexes. Because I know for me, a lot of my masturbation process is about dealing with a kind of weird disgust reflex that appears in my body that is kind of primordial. And also, I can feel it in the enculturation of being a man, right? I can feel it there, but I can also feel it as a kind of like animal response to something that is like maybe difficult to describe succinctly, right? Like there's a kind of disgust response, but even disgust as a word is too limiting for whatever I'm talking about. And so, in the space of touching myself or, whatever, I have to get really clear on what's happening underneath the words that I'm using to tidy up my life. I'm using words to categorize my mind so that I can feel like I'm tidy and hygienic. But the reality of it is that the forest floor is not hygienic. It's not organized in the way that we think organization is. You can't sweep all the leaves out and think that the grass is going to grow back nice because the leaves are necessary to become soil, right? Like, but we are like, no, I'm going to use these words and be like, that's disgust and that's anger and they're different. It's like, well, I don't fucking know if they're different, you know? And the only place that I can really get there is when I close my eyes and I'm alone and I'm with my thoughts and feelings and sensations and emotions and I'm rolling around on the floor, maybe naked, maybe not. But I have to get real with like, oh yeah, my fucking back hurts. Or like, oh, I really want this other thing. Or like, oh, I'm really angry that I'm not somehow being massaged by somebody right now. You know what I mean? Like, fucking that's real for me. Like,
Yeah.
and things like disgust and anger and rage and grief come up. And often they come up without any objects to them.
Mhm.
They're not like I'm angry at person X because they did this thing to me. I mean, maybe at the beginning of my practice, that was what it was like. I'm angry at this person because they did that and that represents XYZ to me. But I get to this place where I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck I'm angry at. I'm just angry. Or like, I don't even know what I'm disgusted about. I'm just disgusted. And that to me is an even deeper level of honesty where you're like, what are you angry about? It's like, I don't fucking know. And in fact, wanting to know why I'm angry is somehow me doing that fucking thing again. We're like, if I know why I'm angry, I don't have to deal with why the anger itself or the want itself. If we're talking about erotic desire, if I know what I want, then I don't have to deal with wanting.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
that's the tip I'm on. I mean, just to give you a kind of like, this is the kind of game I swim in, where it's like, can I get closer and closer to something that is less and less differentiated? And yet, that doesn't mean it's not real, and it doesn't mean it's not any like it's getting to a place where I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't fucking know. Like, and to sit in that I don't know with all the weird shit that comes up from not knowing and being like, what the fuck? And you're saying it's rooted in a masturbatory process.
Mhm.
I mean, that to me is like fucking like the game changer is like not just having a pleasure practice to get off.
Yep. Mhm.
You're having what? So if we're not having a pleasure practice or a masturbation practice to get off, what are we doing, Asha? What the hell is going on?
Mhm. We're outsourcing. We're saying somebody else do this for me. Do it for me. And like, yeah. So I had an abortion a year ago, and my masturbation practice was like really essential to healing that. And I didn't want it. I was like, somebody else fix this for me. Somebody heal me. Like, oh, where is this grief coming from? Where is the shame coming from? Where is this relief coming from? Like all of the things. I didn't want to hold it on my own. I wanted somebody else to take it away. And sex would have been great for that. And sometimes that's what I went for. But it wasn't healing. It wasn't making those things go away. You get like that brief bit of clarity of like emptiness where you're floating, and then it all comes crashing back in. And you have to sit with it. And so that's what that masturbation practice was. And it doesn't always even include touching your genitals. It is just like every night I'm like putting my fingers in my toes and rolling around like a baby and breathing and feeling the grief, and then like it's always waves. You don't need to know why. That's just the way it is. um, Flow with them, go with them. Everything amplifies, and then everything dips down. And you can keep going, and breath is a great way to try and like drive things and control things, but then you also might sit with like, and why do I feel the need to do that?
That's
What
right.
am I really trying to get out of that?
Right. Why am I doing Kundalini breathwork right now?
Yeah,
You know, like for real. For real, for real. It's like, cause, yeah, okay. But yeah, I hear it, and I'm really excited about both the simplicity of this, but also the complexity because, you know, we could go in multiple different directions about like why and how one would navigate those gnarly, beautiful sensations or feelings or emotions that come up in a masturbation process. So there's like a side door of wow, Asha, we need people to teach people how to do this stuff, you know. So that's I'm just naming that. I'm just naming like wow, like I hope you get rich. That's what I'm naming because like we need people to teach people what to do when they're touching themselves and suddenly they want to puke or something, right? And not trying to just get off with masturbation, but also like get in. It's like you're trying to get in. You're like, I'm not trying to get off, I'm trying to get in. That's real, that's real, and I want that. So get in there. So that's a side door. But I think maybe like I want to just do another vibe check, which is like, what's come up for you that feels new or novel or edgy or exciting? What's come up for you either in the course of talking to me about this or just what's come up new for you in the praxis itself as a sort of a larger art form? So like where are you feeling like I'm on an edge here or like I have a lot of questions about something, you know, where's the new for you?
I've been on this, uh, when you talk about somebody needs to teach that, like, where are the initiations? Where are the circles? And it's like people make their own cults instead, just out of this real lack of that initiation process. Um, and like when I first started teaching consent, I was still very in this like colonized, okay, so I need like credentials, I need letters behind my name, especially if I want to talk to kids about this. Like people are very protective of their kids. And so, but now I say fuck all that. But how how do you initiate people into a practice of creating a consent praxis, of having a masturbation practice, of not feeling entitled to sex and to cult to make cults, which is like a sexual practice, really. um, how do we, where's the intervention point? Like, always about the beginning of the beginnings. Where is that?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So for you, is the edge trying to make that happen, or just trying to inquire into that, or
Yeah. Uh, so I'm not a very public person. Like, even being on this podcast is like a edge for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's cool.
So it's just like I sit with that with myself because my little cult, my little circle is my family and my very limited friends and my partner. And like most of them kind of understand what the fuck I'm talking about, but if they don't understand it here, they understand it lower. Like we vibe.
Yeah, the vibe.
um, but yeah, the edge for me is like in even talking about this with people, is that creating an intervention point? Or is this more my masturbatory practice?
Mhm. Right. So again, there's like this unknown quality of like, I can feel you in the soup. Like I can feel you in the soup where it's not quite clear yet, but we might not even be seeking clarity, right? Like there's a bit of like, you know, yeah, like just us having this conversation could be an initiation for somebody. That's real. Like it's not out of the question that somebody gets listens to this podcast in the future and has some kind of initiatory experience just because we held a space where that was a different paradigm. We're talking about a different world here. It's a different world we're in, you and I, right now, Then a lot of people's worlds don't include what we're talking about, we're thinking about. Um, and then I also get the sort of this meta need for like structuring culture in such a way that the babies don't get fucked up before they have to heal the fucked upness. And because I mean it's like it'd be great if you didn't have to go throw yourself down a ditch or get thrown down a ditch, climb back up and be like, I healed from this ditch, but I'm happy, but okay, I wish I didn't get thrown down the ditch. And like that desire to be like, maybe we can help people not get so messed up before, and we can't prevent all of it, right? Obviously that's the point, but we can't prevent maybe any of it, but offering at least some kind of alternative to, the dialogue, the cultural dialogue around relating, consent, mediation, community, even, Because let's not pretend that the SJW community is not having sex with each other all the time. Because that's where, if you're fighting, fighting for justice is extremely arousing. Fighting for justice is extremely arousing. So people are probably, having sex a lot in their fight for justice, and I'm sure that they're bringing colonialism into the bedroom. I'm sure they're doing it. I'm sure they're doing it. Like I used to do it and I didn't even know. And I had to be like, oh, that's that. Okay, I need to stop doing that. Like, for real. So everyone's got to do that kind of work, like decolonize the bedroom. I hate that. I don't want to, let's not, nobody TM that shit. If I see anybody decolonizing a bedroom or something like that, I will. I will.
They're trying it already. They are trying it.
Yeah, right. Okay, anyway, but that being said, like there is something here though about like what is the future of sex? What is
Mhm.
the future of eros? What is the future of wanting? What is the future of desiring? Because we have come from long lines of people, not all of them, but we have come from long lines of people whose idea of life and getting what they wanted involves a lot of violence. Tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of violence. And we're at this interesting precipice where, like, we could kill the planet. We could kill ourselves on the planet in the next 10 years, 20 years. We could do it. But also, if we don't do it, and even if we do, we have an opportunity to really get real about stuff, which includes this primary nature of, like, Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you even do anything? Why do you even want what you want? Have you asked yourself that? Do you have poetry? Do you write poetry about that? I think you should write some poetry about that. Like you write some poetry about what you think you want, and sort of, and that for me, that's my fantasy container. It's like, oh, I'll write poetry, and then I can be like, oh shit, that's what's in there. There's some desire in there. But I hear you kind of, the masturbatory process. Naked animal in the jungle, right? Like, what are you gonna do? Bonobos, what the hell are you gonna do? Like you've got you. That's what you've got. No matter where you are, there you are. No matter where you go, there you are, right? It's like, no matter where I go, my body is with me at least until the next phase of my existence happens, right? Like, we're talking about something where like you don't you don't need to buy a course. You don't need tools. They might be nice, but you're kind of always with you. You're always with you. You're always with your genitals. You don't take them off. They're right there. That's you. That's you, the inside, like, and not even genitals, but like the chemistry inside your endocrine system. Let's get even more real here. That it's not even actually about genitals. It's about your freaking endocrine system, right? You're taking it with you everywhere. So what do we do with that? What do we do with that?
Yeah, I am not really so concerned with healing myself anymore. That was like my into this of like, oh, I just want to feel better. And now I am thinking about the babies and the babies I want to have. And I want them to have that space to roll naked in the jungle and to not feel like they want to get out of their body by getting into somebody else's or have somebody else take control of my body and just tell me what to do with it and make me feel a kind of way. Like in the end, you are what you got. And getting intimate with death so you don't feel like you're crawling out of your skin all the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want it to be weird for them. I don't want them to have to go through the weird parts of the internet and scar themselves to like come to that understanding.
Right. Yeah. Right. Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? Like, where do you see your practice going? Or, yeah, do you even look that far ahead? Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, I am bound by capitalism and paying rent. um, and a 9 to 5, like, yeah, that's grim. In 5 to 10 years, I want out some way or another. I feel like it's the dream for everyone. Um, but with this practice, the pandemic gave me more insight of with myself and with other people. You can teach a consent praxis, teach them how to create one much easier by touching somebody or showing them what it's like to touch yourself. Like that's something that I would, and like substances are great for that as well. Like me and my family have experiences of taking entheogens together and just like working our stuff out and like giving them that shoulder massage and getting in there and being like, why are you like this? Why do you hold all this tension and direct all this energy at people in a non-consensual way? Can we work it out of you right now? And like, I don't know if I want to get paid for that. I think that feels gross and grimy, but I want people to understand that that's like a possibility. um,
Right. So we're here touching like, so I started my sort of career, if you can call it that, which is not really a career, it's just my life. But I started like learning like, I went to massage school a long time ago, you know, And that was the first place I really understood something primary that is hard to describe, which is that like when humans touch each other, and especially in ritualized ways, weird shit can happen
Yep.
real quick, like real crazy psychic dreams can come out, memories can come out, shared things can happen that don't make any, sort of Western sense, but they happen on the massage table and they happen in settings where humans touch each other. Of course, sex is a setting where humans touch each other. And I've often wondered why people have more desire to have sex than they have desire just to learn how to touch each other in different ways. And
Mhm.
so when I learned massage, that was one way, and there's many styles of massage. But then I started going into like martial arts and dance and physical theater, which are other ways to touch each other, artistic ways or creative ways or structural ways to create like a human pyramid or something, like sports is a way to touch each other. But it's not the only way, and of course there's many, many ways of sports. There's many ways to touch each other. You can wrestle, you can do judo, you can do lacrosse, and you kind of brush up against each other every now and then, like. But I do find it interesting that like we as a culture now are both touch crazed and touch phobic. At the same time, the culture is like, touch me, touch me, touch me, touch me. Don't touch me, get the fuck away from me, get the fuck away from me, get the fuck away from me. And I do think that on some level, we need larger trainings and demystifying or destigmatizing, maybe destigmatizing, just touch in general on a gamut, all the way to sexual and all the way away from sexual, which would just be like something else, massage or like, I don't know, touching without any fucking emotion whatsoever. Like, put your hand on my shoulder and don't feel anything, which is a really weird thing to do, but that's what I learned in theater. It's like, okay, we're just going to touch, everyone's going to touch each other on the head. What does it mean? Nothing. We're just going to do it, see what it looks like, you know? Like all the ways you can touch people that don't necessarily even have to be about sexual or pleasure or gratification. And what you're saying is like, yeah, you can also take entheogens and like give people shoulder massages and they probably start crying, right? Because, that's what's in there. And like this to me is really interesting because in this culture, we've also highly, highly, highly policed who can touch who for when in what professional setting. Like
Mhm.
this is kind of both amazing and bonkers to me. That like many people who are talk therapists, of which I am not, let us be clear, I am not a fucking talk therapist. I'm not a massage therapist either, but so that's the other thing. But like a massage therapist can talk to their client, but a talk therapist can't massage their client.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong. I'm saying just look at the logic of that. That doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. A massage therapist must talk to their client. Must. It always does. There's no mute massage therapy thing going on here. People are communicating. People are communicating all the time. And they ask questions. Oh, what happened there? Oh, my mom hit me. Okay, that's massage therapy going into talk therapy. And on the other end of the scale, though, most, if not all, talk therapists are just absolutely disbarred from touching their clients. Now, this to me makes absolutely no sense because imagine imagine being a parent and them telling you how to parent your child is you can only you when you talk to them about their feelings, you can't touch them.
Mhm.
Now imagine how weird that would be. Like, I can't give you a hug, honey, because we are talking about a really serious thing here. That's the culture we live in. We're trying to tell people this all the time in various weird ways that don't make any sense at all. Oh, you really need a hug? Well, I can't hug you. Let's talk about hugging. No, but you really need a hug. Oh, no, no, I can't hug you. Let's talk about hugging. You know? Like that's really like, okay. I mean, it's so absurd, right? Like this is what we're living in. Like we're living in a freaking clown show, right? It's great. It's great. It's like I just wish we all could clown with the clown show because that's what we're doing. Like that's wild. It's so So wild. So yeah, touch. Um, and I know
So
it's tricky to take money for touch, but you're telling me that like this is where this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the rubber hits the road. It's like, can you touch yourself? Can you touch others? Can others touch you? Where is the touching and what field is the touching occurring, right?
Mhm.
And with the
Well,
pandemic, obviously, people are looking and talking a lot, but there's not a whole lot of touching. Not a whole lot of touching going on. Not a whole lot of touching going on.
I think there's a lot of that dominant touching going on
Ooh, okay, okay, yeah.
of like, make me feel better, body. Do this for me now.
Do this for me
um,
now. Yeah.
mhm.
Mhm. Right. So what do you like if you were to cast a spell with your words, with your body in the next 5, 10 minutes, um, what would that sort of spell look like? What would that sound like? What would that spell kind of be?
Mm, well, like there's something about bringing yourself low, 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 low to the ground. Like not have to be so in control anymore.
Mhm. Yeah. I like this. Low, low, low to the ground. Like start there and maybe finish there because I think that's actually what's going to happen. We're gonna start low, we're going to finish low.
Stay
So
low. Like
stay
get
low.
out of your desk. Get off your chair. Like
Right.
just all this fear around like going back to normal and back to the office and back to the like get real low to the ground of like that's where I want to be, into that deep prickly shame place around your anus and your genitals, like feel it go all over, just like spread like, and you don't have to solve it, you don't have to like quick move through it, there's no expansive high afterwards, just get low like mhm.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there's a world of technique in here that I can tell that you're alluding to, and we're not going to get to it today, and that's totally fine, and I'm totally okay with that. Um, do you want to share anything with the listeners about where they can find your work, or yeah, yeah, is that a thing that you want to do to sort of start to close?
Ah, I don't know, I want to get so low underground that nobody ever finds me again.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
leave
yeah.
me
I know.
alone. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on my website. I prefer to have a conversation. I will not pretend to be a professional and to sign a code of ethics and this is how it's going to go. Like I might do that in the future. I can play roles. I can put on hats.
Yeah.
Um, but me showing up here today as Asha, like say hi and like become a part of my community if you want to do that. Like we'll do the vibe check and see like can we do this?
Right.
um,
Yeah. Yeah, I can really feel you on the sort of beautiful edge of like what kind of public figure do you want to be in the world, if that's a term you want to use, but like you're really just vibe. You're like, hey, I'm part of life and this is me, but also like I ain't for everyone and everyone's not for me, so I'm not trying to accumulate that shit. But also maybe it's useful and maybe we can work together, and but we have to have a conversation. People have to have a conversation with you before you ever get to that whole client thing.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the beginning is like vibe, 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 check, 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 check. And
Hmm.
then maybe somewhere down the line, money gets exchanged, right? Something like that.
I mean, donations are appreciated, not required. Like, I'm
Boom. I love it.
not.
I love
Yeah.
it. Great. So, just for everyone listening, I'm going to put all that information below the videos so it'll be easier for everyone to find and to stay in touch. Um, Asha, this was super fucking cool. I wish that you were my consent teacher. You kind of
Yay.
are my consent teacher now, so let's just, give you that little badge of honor.
Mhm.
I really appreciate what you're putting out in the world. I really think it's necessary. I want to promote the kind of body of work that you are producing in the world, even if that's a strange patchwork of things. Like, I really am like pro 100% ASHA consent praxis, and I really hope that people are tuning into this way of talking about consent more. I really hope there's a culture shift happening. Um, yeah. Anything you want to say in closing?
Mhm. Um, yeah, how to acknowledge that, like, I didn't come up with this all on my own. Not at all. Like, I have mentors, human, non-human, spirits, ancestors, everybody coming in and being like, this is within and look without. Mhm.
Great.
So, thank you.
Hey, you're super welcome. Yeah, this is just a rad conversation. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you so much. Please donate to Asha or to myself. You can look at all the links below, bodyalter.org slash underworld party, paypal.me slash dare sohei, DARESOHEI. Those are mine. But you all probably know that already. Just saying, please, if this has helped you, pass it along, pay it forward to somebody else, give them the link, let them know that there are people who can have this conversation in the world. Yeah, pay it forward in some way. If you can donate the monies, that is really greatly happily received and appreciated. Until next time, this is Dare and Asha signing off today. Underworld Party vibes, 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 vibes.